Chapter 4, we're going to look at the Open Catalan in this chapter. So this is d4, knight f6, c4, e6, g3, d5, bishop g2, and move 4, d takes c4. So we looked at move 6, d takes c4. This is where black captures more quickly on c4, and these can be tricky positions. So what I'm going to recommend is that we start with queen a4 check. Knight to f3 is the most common move, but sometimes black is really prepped in these lines I've found, and they're able to hold on to the pawn, create some counterplay, and if they hold that pawn and get the initiative, then we're in big trouble. So I just want to go with queen to a4 check here, forking the king and the pawn on c4, and we're just going to simply win this pawn back. So first we'll look at bishop to d7, that's going to be the first 4 lines, and then we'll look at knight b to d7 for the final 4 lines of the chapter. So here I recommend queen takes c4. We quickly regain that pawn, and we still have the excellent space advantage. And what black should do is figure out a way to fight against that g2 bishop and the pawn on d4. And bishop to c6 is usually the way they try to do it. Try to contest that bishop on g2, put it on the long diagonal. Here we can avoid the trade with knight to f3. And now the problem for black becomes, how do they contest the pawn on d4? Typically, when there's a pawn on d4 and there's no pawns on the 5th rank for black, so all of these squares are open, black wants to play either c5 or e5. Well, c5 is blocked by the bishop. e5 is defended by 2 of our pieces and none of black's pieces. So black is a little bit cramped here, and we're going to play for control of the position. Knight b to d7. This is the most popular move at the club level. We will look at 3 other moves in this position: bishop e7, bishop d5, and queen d5. So now I recommend knight to c3, and what we would love to do is eventually play e4, have 2 pawns in the center, controlling all of these squares on the 5th rank. So that's kind of the idea. And the knight also is natural on c3. It keeps that bishop open on c1. Bishop to e7 for black. We castle. And we want this plan again. We've seen in other chapters. Rook e1 and e4. Build that big center. How does black fight against this? Castle, rook e1, and here black has to react. Pawn to e4 is coming soon. The most common move is bishop takes f3, giving us the bishop pair, but allowing black to fight back more in the center. Black is cramped there. Bishop takes f3 is a way to try to relieve some of that passive play that he has with knight, bishop, knight, and the other bishop. So now c6. Black is admitting a passive position with the pawns here, but they're still planning long-term to get their break in. e5 is what black wants to play next, right? They traded on f3. That knight was guarding e5. This knight's on d7. Now black really wants to play e5 to try to neutralize our central advantage. Here we play rook to d1. So our rook did its job on e1. It encouraged the bishop to take f3 by black. And now the rook shifts over to d1, guarding this pawn, and lines up with the queen. So it's not as easy for black to play e5 or c5. Rook to c8. Black kind of wants b5, maybe e5 next. Here we can grab the space. e4. And if it's our move again, we play pawn to e5. We have a pretty big advantage here. Removing the defender of h7, we can shift our attack over towards the black king. So at this point, black should play pawn to e5. Here we have bishop to e3. And the eval is 0.7. This is thanks to a few different resources. We got the bishop pair, we have extra space, and we have mobile pieces. And then we'll leave you with the plan in this position, like always. We want to play queen back to e2, bring her to safety. Rook a to c1. After black takes, we're going to take with the bishop. And then we'll go for queenside expansion, a3 and b4. So that's line number 1. We're looking at 0.7 stockfish eval. And now we'll go back to the 7th move and look at some different options for black. So next we'll go to bishop to e7, second most popular move at the club level.